Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Well, we finally got a verdict. We have been on verdict watch most of this week in the Scott Peterson trial. Now don't confuse this with the other Scott Peterson. This is Scott with one T. This is Scott Peterson, the former SRO, the deputy that was at Parkland during the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting that was committed by murderer Nicholas Cruz. And there's a photo of him with his attorney, who I have found to be, I thought he was a great defense attorney. So I'm going to play when the judge read the verdict.
It's my understanding that you have reached unanimous verdicts. If in fact that is the case, if I could get the foreperson to fold those verdict forms in half and give them to the court deputy, who will then give those verdict forms to me, please. Okay, the verdict forms are complete. I will now publish them. They read as follows. In the Circuit Court of the 17th Judicial Circuit in and for Broward County, Florida, case number 19-7166 CF10A, State of Florida plaintiff versus Scott Peterson defendant. Verdict, count one. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count two. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count three. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count four. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count five. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count six. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count seven. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count eight. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count nine. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 10. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 11. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to address you only by the numbers that are on the back of your badges. Juror number one, are these your true verdicts?
Yes, they are.
Juror number two, are these your true verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number four, are these your true verdicts? Juror number five, are these your true verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number six, are these your true verdicts? Juror number seven, are these your true verdicts? Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. Mr. Peterson, I think that concludes your business. At this point, sir, the jury having found you not guilty on counts 1 through 11, I will likewise enter an order of acquittal as to counts 1 through 11. Mr. Igosh, is there anything you need me to do regarding Mr. Peterson?
No, you're right.
I wish you good luck, sir. State, anything else you need me to do? Okay. Then at this point, that's going to conclude the proceedings in 19-7166 CF10A. All right, Madam Court Reporter, that is it.
You were here the whole time. 4 years.
The emotion that came out of Scott Peterson. It's amazing. And I know not everyone agrees with this verdict. I actually think it was the right verdict, in my opinion. Again, if you don't agree, you're always welcome to disagree with me in the comments. Just be respectful. Everyone has a right to their opinion. I just don't agree that he, A, was a caregiver by the legal term, and you know, and it just goes further than that. And they were giving like exactly what his attorney stated. He was being thrown out as a sacrificial lamb. Do I think that he could have done more, or he was not necessarily doing his complete job by not moving? Yeah, I think there's some questions to that. That's kind of hard to determine, you know. It's kind of hard to know what he was thinking, what exactly was going on. You have to kind of go by someone's word and obviously the video. But if he didn't know where the shots were coming from, you know, there's a lot of back and forth on that particular issue as it is. But I don't think he's a criminal. Honestly, the bottom line is Nicholas Cruz was the murderer, and he is in prison. And this man, regardless of if he didn't go in like we all thought he should, or a lot of people thought he should, he was not the one who terrorized, killed, and injured all these people at this high school. And there's a bit of reaction, actually, afterwards from Scott, and I wanted to play that as well before I close out the video. So this is right after the verdict, when Scott Peterson, his family, and his lawyer, when they left the courtroom and they were speaking to the media.
You guys are still here, huh? Scott, talk to us about how emotional this is for you. What's going through your mind right now in your heart?
Got my life back.
We got our life
We've
back.
got our life back after 4.5 years
5.5.
because of Mark
Yep.
and being able to put the truth out of what happened. It's been an emotional roller coaster for so long. Endless nights, talking to Mark 1 in the morning, trying to understand and learn this whole case. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. But don't anybody ever forget this was a massacre on February 14th. The only person to blame was that monster. It wasn't any law enforcement. Nobody on that scene, from BSO, Coral Springs, everybody did the best they could. We did the best we could with the information we had, and God knows we wish we had more.
What do you say to the family, Scott? I know it's emotional for them today too, but this obviously isn't the outcome they wanted. Do you have any response to?
You know what I tell the families? I would love to talk to them. I have no problem calling Mark, saying, "Hey, we want to talk. We'd like to know everything." I'm there. I would have been there from day one. So I'll always be there. If they need to really know the truth of what occurred, and not only my actions but what occurred, I'm there for them. Me and Lydia, we've mourned with them for 4.5 years. I've seen some of these family members, and I'd love to went over to them and hugged them and said, "God, I'm sorry." But, I know that's maybe not what they're feeling at this point. Maybe now, maybe they'll get a little understanding, but I'll be there for them. I'll be there for them. How could I not?
What about the prosecution? What do you say to the prosecutors who brought this case?
I'll let Mark talk about that.
We are extremely pleased with the outcome today. But understand something, this is not just a victory for Scott. It's a victory for every law enforcement officer in this country who does the best they can every single day. How dare prosecutors try to second guess the actions of honorable, decent police officers?
Lydia, do you have something to say?
You know, through this journey, Scott is my life, my heart, my soul, and people could never understand how are you doing it. And it's simple. The Lord is my rock and my strength. And faith, you walk by faith and you never, ever, ever give up.
It's extremely important to understand how we got here. Former Sheriff Scott Israel held a press conference without ever speaking to my client about what happened. From that, every one of us erroneously assumed that my client knew that kids were being killed in that building and he just didn't go in. Well, these jurors made it clear through their verdict that that couldn't be further from the truth. He did everything he could, and as a result of Sheriff Scott Israel's reckless, selfish political actions, he had to endure 4 years. 4 years of heartache and misery. No one should ever have to go through that.
Scott, what's next for you? Going home to North Carolina, I imagine. What's next?
I'm first going to go, everybody who's in Broward County in South Florida who supported me. I'm going to everyone's house. That for the last 4 years has been saying, "Scott, hang in there." I'm giving everybody a hug, the biggest hug I can give. And then I'm going back home, going back to the mountains.
And then we're going to the Vatican.
Yeah.
Tonight we're celebrating.
Yep.
We're celebrating my house, not just a victory for Scott, but the victory for all law enforcement officers.
Amen.
And that the system worked. It took a while. It was rough. It was not easy. But eventually, these jurors got it right. And so the system works, and we should all feel good that if you're falsely accused, eventually, at least in this instance, they will get it right. They will make it right.
And thank you, jurors.
Mr. Peterson, you didn't take the stand, and I know from speaking to you and Mark over the last 5 years that had to absolutely burn you alive. How did you convince him to not put you up there?
To be honest with you,
Or how did he convince you?
It was just a lot of back and forth, and at the end of the day, Mark's my lawyer, and he knew what was best, and I was going to follow what Mark needed me to do.
When this case started, so that we're clear, he 100% wanted to take that stand. During this case, 100%. He needed to take that stand. That's what he was telling me. And I had to tell him no. They did not meet their burden, and they should never, ever look to him to prove the case. And I think that his words got out, through the testimony, they knew his position. 2 days after this, he said, I didn't know where the shots were coming from. And they could never prove otherwise because he didn't.
Scott, there are school resource officers right now at a national convention convening. They're paying attention to your case. What would you say to those officers who may have been nervously waiting along with you on the outcome?
I think they probably had a very legitimate concern because of this case regarding the issue with the caregivers. But to all school resource officers out there, SROs, we're police officers, and we're there at that school because we want to make a difference. We always have. That's why I had been a school resource officer for 28 years. Because you do, not only you know that you're a law enforcement officer, but you're there to make a difference. So for all these SROs, not only in the state of Florida, but nationally, maybe they can breathe easier knowing, God forbid, if they ever went through something like this, that hopefully the justice system, will prevail for them as well. But I would never want any law enforcement officer in this country to go through the last 4.5 years of what I went through.
I think it's very important to focus on the prosecutor's office in this case. They had access to the same facts that these jurors did. Every single deposition that I attended, they attended. They knew the facts in this case, yet they persisted with this meritless prosecution. And so you got to ask yourselves, what's their motivation here? And if it's politics, which it clearly is, something needs to be done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you all. You guys have been great. Thank you
very much.
So I thought that was very good. It was nice to hear from Scott himself. Obviously, we've heard a lot from Mark English, his lawyer, who, again, if I ever needed a lawyer for something, that I was accused of something, he's definitely the kind of lawyer you want on your side. I definitely think that this would have set a precedent for SROs, and it was a good question that was asked by the reporter. I don't know who asked it, but because if he would have been found guilty, that would have been a huge thing for every single school resource officer. It could become on, not just in Florida, but on every campus across the country. So, yes, a school resource officer is there to do what they can and to protect the students to their best of their abilities. But you're talking thousands of students, hundreds of students to thousands of students, depending upon what sort of campus you're on. I mean, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was huge, is huge. So, again, I think it's a lot of weight for one man, one individual to have to put on their shoulders. Granted that when a cop straps on that gun and that badge and what have you, they have a lot of heavy burden to meet. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions as to what sort of role an SRO takes on at a school. And it's, in my opinion, it's not a caregiver. And obviously the jury agreed with that. But again, you guys let me know what you think of the verdict in the comments. And do you think it was a fair verdict? Do you think justice was served? Or do you think it wasn't? Again, it's not about these families, how they feel. I've always felt horrifically horrible for every single one of them. And obviously, Scott has as well. I doubt, unfortunately, that these families are going to want to speak to him. But you never know. Hearts could open up. But at the same time, this was a huge, horrible thing that these families went through. And they had to relive it. A lot of them had to relive it during this trial. So I can't even imagine. All right, guys, I hope you have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.